right across the camera. There you go. Now my house smells like blackberries. Okay, which is actually an improvement on what it's been, because as I was telling you guys before we came online. Hello and welcome to our Fermenting Opinions Hangout. This is October 2nd, 2018. I'm your host, David Papiden. James McVeigh could not be here because he's busy canvassing for Jill Stein 2020. And this is what you get, James. I said before we came on, every one of these he misses, I'm going to tell a ridiculous lie about him, and he can't do anything about it. Nah. Anyway, so we're coming back to you. We met up last week, and we had a good conversation about the allegations made by Dr. Ford against Brett Kavanaugh, who's Supreme Court nominee, and sort of what we thought of those allegations and where it should go from there. Now, since that, basically a day later, there was like day-long hearings, and I was off, so I got to hear all of that stuff, and I got to hear her testimony and his testimony, and you guys at this point have all either saw that yourselves or sort of seen summations and all these think pieces and opinions that have come out. So really just wanted to talk to you guys about it. Tonight we have with us John. I don't know if you want to use your last name or not. That's up to you. John. We have John, and we have Haley and Melissa here joining us tonight for our little round table discussion. So thanks guys for being here.
Of course.
Yeah, no problem.
Great.
Thanks
So
for the invitation.
Absolutely. So I don't know who wants to lead in. I've got to do a little bit of housekeeping stuff. So if you guys want to just say hi to each other and stuff.
Sure.
Okay.
Yeah. Well, I think that John had, a differing view than what we've seen just being expressed on the Facebook page. So I'm interested in knowing more about that.
Yeah, sure. For those who weren't clued in just a moment ago, I was talking about some experiences I've had with other groups. But I think a lot of the consensus of what myself and some of my contemporaries agreed with is that we're not really comfortable with Brett Kavanaugh taking the role in the Supreme Court, but it's not due to the allegations. Beyond the fact that, I feel a lot of his commentary has kind of solidified him as being a fairly partisan pushover. That was something we thought that was kind of a little bit weak. And then just kind of the way he handled himself, just his emotional responses, and then the fact, he absolutely, I don't think anyone can deny the fact that he lied under oath about the drinking scenario in his past. Whether or not he lied about the allegations remains to be seen, but I absolutely think it's ridiculous to say that you never passed out from drinking at a young age, or blacked out, rather. I just am incredibly skeptical of that. And I would be skeptical of anybody that said the same thing who drank at all in high school.
Yeah, I think that I can see that. I don't know if I feel like he should be confirmed or not. And one thing I will say is I'm rather frustrated with people that tell me that because I'm a woman and because I'm a two-time rape survivor and a woman, that I should not doubt Dr. Ford's testimony. I've kind of come to a change of my own, and as far as what I feel like as far as the confirmation and Judge Kavanaugh, I don't know that like I've said before, and I may have not said this last week, but I believe there's something might have happened to Dr. Ford. I'm not sold that it was Judge Kavanaugh that did it to her. As I mentioned last week, I can detail minutia from my assault, and that was in 1987. It was October 30th, 1987. It was homecoming weekend. I remember it vividly. My mother was out of town on business in Dallas. It was one of the few times that I was allowed to stay at home by myself, and it was a boy in the apartment complex that we lived in who just happened to know that it was a weekend when my mom was out of town and I'd be alone. I can remember finer details. And so I have my doubts. I do believe something happened to Dr. Ford. I do believe she had some trauma. But what is unsettling to me, and maybe it's unfair for me to compare my situation to her situation, and I'm sure that people will think that it is. But she was a 15-year-old girl, it seems to me that someone would have to take her and pick her up from a party, and you're not allowed to drive. At least, certainly, I don't believe you were even in 1982, which she wasn't even sure that it was 1982. That she was even of legal age to drive without a licensed driver accompanying her. She doesn't remember who was there. She doesn't remember how she got there, how she got home. Doesn't remember the exact year. But she's 100% certain that it's Kavanaugh. So because she doesn't remember all of the pertinent details, but does remember that doesn't sit well with me. Now, where I've kind of changed my mind is I do feel like Judge Kavanaugh was less than forthcoming, but I do not think that should prevent him from, being in the position that he's in now. He should, if he doesn't step down, then we absolutely let the Senate vote on his confirmation. But I feel like people that are coming at people that don't automatically believe Dr. Ford's testimony as fact and gospel, that I have a problem with, because I've got friends with sons, and they're actually scared because their perception is, oh my God, any woman at any time can accuse my son of anything, and we have to hashtag believe women, even if it's not true. So I feel like there are people that are not looking at both sides of the argument. I'm not saying that Dr. Ford is lying. I would never do that, because I do believe every woman should be able to tell her story. I don't say that I think she's lying. But I feel like we need to be careful as a mob with the pitchforks and torches and coming after Kavanaugh without any definitive proof. I don't know that he should be confirmed just because I think he's kind of smarmy. Like he was the kid the know-it-all kid that everybody loved to hate in school. He just comes across as smarmy to me in those testimonies. But I feel like you were saying, John, about how in the other group you were asked to leave because you did not believe the way that they believed. I feel like that's to a larger degree been kind of part of the fallout in the Believe Women hashtag movement. Believe women, but it's kind of like that trust but verify. Well, right. We have nothing to verify. How can I believe you and trust you if we have nothing to verify that we can put a pin in?
And it wasn't even that I said I didn't believe her claims. I said there's a very possible, chance that they could be accurate. I just don't think we should jump to conclusions. I don't think
everything is very circumstantial.
It's America. It's like you're innocent until proven guilty, and that's pretty much a founding principle of this country. But in response to what you just said a moment ago, there was actually a story on the news today about you were talking about how your friends were worried about their sons. There was I believe he was either 14 or 15-year-old boy who was taken out of school in handcuffs because he was accused of sexual assault. And what ended up happening is the other students were like jealous he won something or something like that. And like to get back at him, like they tried to get him arrested, and they used that as a reason behind it.
First of all, I want to say hi to Amanda. Thanks for joining us. She's currently muted. Amanda, you're muted right now. I think she's fixing it.
Yeah, I muted myself just in case my kids barge in because they do that sometimes.
Good to do that.
It can be a little rowdy.
Well, good deal. Just wanted to say hi. What were your thoughts from the hearings themselves? I guess the testimonies, I guess, is what they should be considered, both Dr. Ford's and also Kavanaugh's. Well,
a couple of things. First of all, I do believe her, and I think I get a little frustrated when I hear people say, well, she doesn't remember how she got home. She doesn't remember, certain details of it. I'm not willing to share my Me Too stories yet, but I think that there are certain things that stand out to you and will always be with you, but that doesn't mean that every single detail will. So I just, and not only that, but a lot of what she was talking about was corroborated. So you go back to Kavanaugh and his calendars. Okay, well, I mean, it's not definitively corroborated, but it's at least compelling, enough to look into and find out more information, along with, Mark Judge working at Safeway. Those are things that the FBI can absolutely look into and verify. They may not be able to verify all of her story, but I think that they can verify key details that are important enough to, I don't want to say like convict, because it's not criminal, but I also don't think to not promote him. Right. I just tend to, I think that she offered more compelling evidence that he did it than he offered that he didn't. And even some of the things that he offered up really kind of backed up her side of the story.
Yeah, one of the things that I recall specifically is he didn't listen to her testimony, and I don't think it was known before she testified that, one of the names of one of the other gentlemen who was at the party was PJ, and on his calendar there's an entry, I think it was like July 1st, 82. It's like him, PJ, some other dude, and Mark Judge.
She named them by name.
Yeah.
So I think that there's enough information there to make him at least suspicious and to make it suspect enough to not promote him. I guess is where I'm not necessarily like, I mean, it's hard because on one hand, like if these things aren't true, you don't want his entire life to be destroyed.
But it's already destroyed regardless.
Well,
from what I understand, though, the calendar portion is being, I guess, dropped from the case against him because it said get skis with somebody at somebody's house, and said house was 10 miles away from the supposed location of the party. And skis was apparently referring to Brewskis.
So I thought that they hadn't determined where the supposed party was yet. Am I mistaken on that?
I don't know. I read just today on an article that it said it was 10 miles away.
There are some new things that came out. I haven't seen the 10 miles thing, but like,
yeah, that's not familiar.
If she, from her testimony, she doesn't remember exactly what house she was at, right?
Correct.
Right. So that's everything I've read, and she's maintained
a contradiction, really.
Yeah. It did say there was an invitation list. It was exclusively mailed out.
Interesting. For a party with teenagers. Anyway, I don't want to.
I don't know.
It's stuff I didn't see, so I don't want to go on a rabbit trail.
Briefly before
the thing that was significant to me is that he asserted that during his testimony that, he wouldn't drink on a weeknight. And that party on his calendar, there's a couple things about the calendar. The party on his calendar was on a weeknight, one, and two, he's stating what he decided to write on a calendar. I don't think anyone said this. What he decided to write on the calendar was up to him at the time. And he already admitted himself that say, well, going to church was as natural as brushing my teeth, so I wouldn't have put it on there. But those were events that he did that he chose not to include. So obviously he's not including everything. It's a tiny square. If I went to a party where I sexually assaulted somebody, I might not write it on a calendar.
Right.
That occurs to me as something I might want to leave off, that detail.
Well, that and the other part of it too is there's two parts, and I guess you would almost have to believe one to believe the other. So my theory, what I think happened was he probably drank too much and doesn't remember it, which isn't out of the realm of possibility. So that could be part of it. And maybe the event to him wasn't significant enough in his mind to remember it, where for her, it was a traumatic event. So it's going to stand out in her mind. She's going to remember it.
Right. And one of the things I think I keep coming back to this, and other people do this. I know, Haley, you do, that, we're not trying to convict him of sexual assault, right?
Right.
This isn't a court of law. For me, this is just an examination of the testimonies and the reliability of each based on what they said. And we basically, we make an inference as to which we find more plausible, because they contradict each other pretty starkly. For the the main premise of each one is I was sexually assaulted and I definitely did not sexually assault. So like those two can't exist in reality at the same time. Somebody's wrong, we're lying,
Right.
Or both. So like, but all we're not trying to convict Brett Kavanaugh of sexual assault. We're trying to find out essentially who's made the the more plausible claim here for me from those testimonies, and whether or not that should reflect on his fitness as a Supreme Court judge.
So I'm glad you used that word. Before you become an attorney, you have to apply at the bar. You have to do your character and fitness assessment, because in order to be an officer, to sit for the bar, to become an officer of the court, they just need to make, you have to give them a bunch of references, say where you've lived for the past 10 years, list any criminal convictions, list all the jobs you worked, and then they call all your references, and they call some of your your previous employers and some other people, and ask about you. And, if someone tells them, he sexually assaulted me, or she did, they would, they're determining whether or not you have the character and fitness to, have a license and represent other people, before a court. And so I kind of equate it with the same thing. They're measuring his character and fitness to be a Supreme Court judge.
And I heard something interesting on NPR, and I haven't verified it yet, but they had a guest on this morning, and I think that he was like maybe the second in command for the FBI at one point. But he made a point that I haven't heard anywhere, because you hear, well, they've already done 6 background investigations. What do they expect to find now? Well, they only go back for 18 years. So of course they're not going to come up with any of this if they're only going back for 18 years.
I thought it was 25. But
he said 18.
It wasn't,
like I said, I haven't verified it.
I knew that it wasn't 30. I thought it was 25. I knew that it wasn't 35. But yeah, they have it for the character and fitness for like to sit for the bar. It's 10 years is how far back in your past they look. So yeah, there's a cutoff. If you did something worse when you were younger.
Well, when he was appointed as a federal judge, that was under what, George H.W. Bush or W. Bush?
That was W. Bush, I think.
So that still would have been within that parameter when they would have gone back 20 years, 25 years.
Well, I think he was appointed whenever he was appointed to a federal judge, the very first one was 97, I believe. Is that right?
I don't know. I'm Googling it right now.
Yeah, go ahead and Google it for us, Amanda. Yeah, I don't know. I guess that does stick out as one of the more interesting things to me, and maybe things that break in Kavanaugh's favor is the fact that he did go through so many like sort of background investigations and sort of like this character and fitness type assessments. So somebody do
what
math.
Was he appointed to? And I thought there was something from 1997. Maybe that's whenever he was. Oh, that's whenever he was working for Ken Starr.
Yeah,
that's right.
Yeah, that's right. But like, essentially, just to finish my thought quickly, like the fact that really nothing like this was that we know of was turned up, and not just sexual assault, but like the history of like lewd, drunken, aggressive behavior that's being, that's how he's being characterized. That was what he was like in high school. That's what he was like in college. And there's a lot of people coming out now saying that, and also the various degrees of sexually aggressive type, disposition towards women, and these allegations of like him whipping his dick out, and the Ramirez lady, was it?
Yeah, it was Ramirez.
Which it was funny. Again, today I saw there was a picture. I guess it was like 10 years after the alleged that they were at a wedding together, and you see both of their pictures in the wedding photo. So it shows at least they knew each other. But again, a lot of it is he said, she said, right? But I think the devil is in those sort of details. Well, I guess one thing I'll say of Ford that I also found interesting is that she was including sort of facts and details that don't necessarily flatter her case, right? Because she named Mark Judge, who is Kavanaugh's buddy, right? And so basically she's saying she was in a room with two guys who are both denying it, and they're both sort of backing each other up is my understanding. If I was trying to nail somebody spuriously on a sexual assault charge, I would name a witness who was going to back me up and not one who was going to say didn't happen.
Right.
But if I was a person who was telling the truth, whether or not it was flattering, and those were the people in the room, that's what I would have to say. So to me, that speaks to credibility. But again, we're not trying to convict the guy. I don't know. John, what do you think?
Yeah, I can agree with that. I think that Ford definitely has, of the multitude of people who have accused Kavanaugh of sexual assault as of late, hers is definitely the most likely accusation to be truthful. I find I'm having a lot of skepticism in regards to some of the others, especially because one of them just started backtracking today. Yesterday.
I saw some of that. Yeah. It came out, I think, a little bit yesterday, and then some more today. Just all the the punditry and whatever that follows it. It was her name starts with an S. It's like
Julie Swetnick.
Swetnick, that's her. Yes, that she wrote.
Is she backtracking? I mean, I saw like the NBC interview, which was awful.
Really, I didn't see.
Well,
it.
Her account had changed.
Yeah, and there were some important details that changed.
But there's also just a lot of points, even in her original accusations, that I find incredibly skeptical. Like her saying she attended 10 of these rape parties. It's just like, why would you attend 10 of them after knowing what's going on?
Yeah.
Or maybe it happened at the 10th.
Yeah, well, I mean, she said she was sexually assaulted.
Well, then they wouldn't be rape parties. There wouldn't be 10 rape parties if it happened at the 10th, though.
Yeah. Right.
Yeah.
The way that
either way, I'm a little skeptical of her.
I would go to these parties where these guys, like groups of boys, would take girls and things, yada, yada, yada. And she said, I went to these parties where this happened. And they were like, how many parties did you go to? And she was like, 9 or 10. And then like one of the stories where she was with a friend and then just like found out what was going on and left her friend there with them. Just like, oh.
I guess that is the weird thing to me. If you know that there's like rapey bros at a party who may or may not be spiking punch, that would be the first and last party like that I would go to.
Yeah, and I've absolutely.
How many high school parties did you go to as a college student?
Me?
Yeah, that's part of it too. I mean,
I caught that trick question.
I was about to mention that, like, I'm sure
Fast Times at Ridgemont High. What?
Sure, stuff like this actually happens. Like, I'm not going to. When I went to college, I went to University of Tennessee for a year. Absolutely hated it, and then went elsewhere to get the rest of my education. But when I was there, I participated in Rush Week the first year that I attended because, hey, I want free beer, right?
Sure.
And I'm not going to tell what frat or anybody's name or anything, and they got in trouble for this because it was reported multiple times. But I remember distinctly walking in because we were just going frat to frat, just drinking beers, hanging out. And one of them, like their party hadn't started yet, and like we walk in and it's only guys, and we're like, what the hell, this is like a trash week, why are there only guys in here? And apparently they weren't letting girls in yet, and we were like, why? And the like head of the fraternity and these other guys told everybody to come into this different room, and there was like literally a fishbowl, and it was filled with like Rufalin, and they were like trying to pass it out to people, and they
Jesus
said, yeah, like promise this happened. So I understand that parties like that exist, but it was still just like, I mean, we left immediately.
Sure.
That's awful. No, but she graduated, I think, 2 or 3 years ahead of Kavanaugh. So like she would have been a college student hanging out at high school parties.
Yeah. Not unheard
potentially.
Of, but...
There's a thing that I'll say. We talked about this a little bit last week that James had actually pointed out that, or rather that he made the argument that there was a lot of speculation going on her part. I think the reason, because she has signed an affidavit, and because I cannot say that word for the life of me. Sorry, everybody. I'm not a lawyer. And which makes her liable for criminal perjury if she's actually caught having lied on any of this. What she says is basic in that statement, in that sworn statement, because I won't say the word, in that sworn statement, that it's cagey enough that she states certain facts. based on what she's saying are her observations, and is letting people draw their own conclusions about in a way that is, sort of rather leading, right? And I think she walked back a little bit of what she said, but nothing that she said, either today or yesterday in the interview, to my knowledge, actually directly contradicts anything in the statement. So, like, you could say that maybe she wanted people to conclude something worse from the statement than what really happened,
right.
And again, it's
Right.
Narrative essentially going on at that point. But I don't think she's in any legal hot water, because I don't think she actually directly contradicted herself anywhere there. But she's saying, that they were, aggressive, kind of rapey guys, heard about people trying to spike the punch, saw them hanging around the punch. She had the punch. She felt woozy. She was raped. It doesn't mean none of that stuff happened, right? Like, but it also doesn't actually put Kavanaugh or Mark Judge. No.
Mike
Judge. Okay.
No, it's Mark.
It's Mark. Because
Mike Judge is from what is it, King of the Hill and Beavis and Butthead.
Sorry, please do not sue me, Mike Judge, for slander. Mark Judge placed them both at the party, but never stated that either of them were directly, involved in, what happened to her, into her assault. Just that it happened, and basically just kind of painting them as guys that do stuff like that indirectly.
You
right?
did raise an interesting point, though, slightly earlier in your commentary,
sure,
about how it's been so many years, and assuming that any, if not multiple, of these allegations are true, the number of witnesses that there should have been reporting it over the span of 35 years. It just is kind of surprising that they were able to get away with this behavior at such a magnitude without
right. And that goes on into, I guess, sort of a whole other thing. It's actually, we're doing tomorrow, supposed to be cutting an episode on why I didn't report, basically talking. We're going to have an interview guest talking about why they don't, things that had happened to them and they didn't tell anybody,
right.
or they waited a long time to say anything.
I guess like, let's say there were 10 of these like specific rape den parties.
Oh, sure.
That's a surprising number of parties, I guess, to have occurred without anyone coming forward, I think.
Right.
Even, someone who participated feeling guilt, maybe.
That's also, Haley, could you, I don't know who's doing that, but there's a lot of clicking and clacking. Oh, thank you, Haley. Sorry, go ahead.
No, that was
okay. Yeah.
Sorry, I'm mixing a drink. My bad.
It's okay. I know.
I guess
I'm just glad I have one here myself.
That in culmination with the other allegations, it's like, assuming all of those are true, it's surprising that nothing has been.
Right.
So it's yeah.
And I guess what I have to keep coming back to here is do I believe Ford's testimony over Kavanaugh's? I think. Because, and you pointed this out yourself, I think, I can't remember if we'd gone on yet or not, but essentially that because he is trying so hard to cover up his behavior at de minimis of his excessive drinking and his general attitude, which seems fairly obvious in the record at this point, and we might get into that later, that his testimony is the less reliable of the two. And I find Ford's more reliable. If I had to guess, and this isn't proof, and we're not trying to convict on this, between these two things, with regard to at least Dr. Ford's allegations, I think they're more likely to be true than not. And that's where I have to sit with it.
Well, I think also that I think that if he starts to cave and admit to the fact that he was basically raucous drunk when he was a teenager, it leaves the door open to the possibility that he was blacked out and actually did those things. So I think that that's kind of a form of defense for himself.
And I actually think, that he probably, I think that he probably just got blackout drunk, whenever he was younger, and maybe woke up in circumstances next to a girl, like didn't remember everything. And he just, and
that's what I think happened.
It's annoying that, if you blacked out drunk a few times and, said, maybe I don't believe I did this, but I did black out drink, and, I've woken up in less than ideal circumstances,
Sure.
I think everyone accepts that humans have flaws, that no one is perfect and everything. But it was the extremely defensive nature of that I really took issue with.
Right.
I mean,
I'm with you.
And I want to echo that as well. And I think really that like if he had any way, he should have never taken the stand, honestly, because he made himself, in my mind, look extremely bad, relating to things not actually about sort of the night in question, but just about his sort of general behavior and character. Anytime he was asked a question, he would get cagey. He would deny, the Beach Week Ralph Club. Oh, I have a weak stomach because I ate spicy food. Essentially, is what he's saying. It's like, are you fucking really? Like, yeah. I mean, you're at Beach Week out or after high school, and you're part of the Ralph Club and the Keg King, whatever the heck kind of thing. Like, we know you drink a lot and you make yourself throw up because that's what people in your situation do. Like, right. If I was out with my buddies at that age going to the beach, you're damn right I'd be up all night drinking. I mean, come on, anybody really would. And to pretend you're a damn choir boy instead, like it's just an obvious lie. And to me, that's where he screws himself, is that he's lying about shit. It's really obvious, and a lot of them is easily provable as obvious. And again, having nothing directly to do with whether or not he's guilty of sexual assault, he's there on the stand, which is, by the way, a criminal. I mean, he's under oath, and he's lying to the Senate, which is by itself a crime.
So this is something that James, myself, and a few others discussed not too long ago, where we completely kind of agree with that. He made himself look terrible, and we feel like, assuming that this is all the evidence that we're going to receive and the FBI investigation doesn't turn up anything, our opinion of what the Supreme Court should do is say it's like, all right, we can't prove that you committed any acts of sexual assault. However, we would still like to search for a candidate that is more qualified for this position.
Yeah, certainly. I think at the end of the day, he's still going to be a federal judge. I mean, it's not.
Well, if we lived in a more utopic society, I think the fact that he's perjured himself, that he should be subject to impeachment. Like that's a thing that should happen for anybody who gets up in front of Congress and lies to them as badly as he did.
Do you think that'll happen though, or do you think he'll just go back to being a federal judge?
I am a man of no faith, and I have especially no faith in our checks and balances these days. So whether or not I can say it should happen, whether or not it will, it sounds.
You want to hear an interesting turn of events?
Go ahead.
Is if he does go back to being a federal judge and he does get called up for ethics violations, Merrick Garland is the judge that would review him.
Oh boy.
How about that?
Burns going.
I mean, I couldn't see. I think that he would go back to being a federal judge. Just the political climate that we're in.
Yeah.
I think that it would just be like okay, everybody take a deep breath and whatever.
But I think to your point though, John, I think you're right that there was a short list, right, of basically Federalist Society approved judges that were going. One of these was going to be picked for the next Supreme Court seat. Those people are still there. I think really, and we talked about this a little bit last week. The really no reason why they're fighting so hard on this one is because they're afraid of the midterms and not having enough time to basically. I think they said during the hearings that like the average time between nomination and and vote is a couple of months, 60 to 80 days, something like that. And now it's like it's gone. We're into extra innings with it basically because of all of these allegations.
They have the lame duck session. They have time.
They could.
Yeah,
It just, I imagine the fear is that Democrats will stall it till after the election and then say, oh, well, exiting senators shouldn't be able to vote, kind of pull the Garland line essentially on people who are leaving office, whether or not they should get to vote on the next Supreme Court justice. Maybe they're afraid of that. I don't really know. But they should have, when the first whiff of this thing came up, if the Republicans were smarter, the Republicans in Congress, I don't want to just smear all Republicans everywhere, but the people in power who are of the party if they were smarter about this, as soon as the first whiff of this came out and how ugly it could get, they should have withdrawn him immediately, and they could have put up someone else. They could have put up a woman. There are some women on the short list that I understand to be the case, that is pretty much in lockstep with his judicial philosophy, which I also hate, but I'm not getting into that.
I also think that like the moment that the first whiff of this came out, if they were just like, okay, you know what, never mind, we're picking someone new. I mean, one, that would totally be viewed as rewarding Democrats because you could just do that. But Kavanaugh wouldn't have made the ass that he made of himself on national television. The Ford testimony would have never happened. Like he wouldn't. He just wouldn't. He wouldn't be all over the news.
No, but I think that he's going to be confirmed because, what's his face? Mitch McConnell came out today saying they're going to hold the vote. I think Friday or Saturday. And I don't think that he would call the vote if he wasn't totally confident that they had enough votes to confirm him.
That's exactly right. McConnell is a smart guy. For having messed this up, I guess. Yeah, we'll say. I would give him smart. I would totally give him smart. Because initially when this thing came out, I felt like it was a McConnell-esque move on the Democrats' part to have this come out in the 11th hour kind of thing.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Well, I mean, Ford talked about that, and she wanted to remain confidential, and it wasn't until there was a leak to the press,
yeah. Yeah, if you're truly skeptical, you may not believe that really, that it really was the timing on purpose, or maybe it wasn't.
I don't know. She said something at the hearing that really stuck with me, and I've thought about this sentence a few times. And she was just like, while she was still confidential. So Feinstein can't bring her out 'cause she wants to remain a confidential, constituent, and Feinstein must keep her confidence. She said, I was weighing the risk-benefit analysis of throwing myself in front of a train that was probably still going to get where it's going anyway. And I don't know, that stuck with me, because I don't know if I've been sexually assaulted. If that person was up for Supreme Court nomination, I could see I don't want to go through that crap. I understood where she was coming from, the throwing yourself in front of a train, even though it's probably getting where it's going anywhere. I don't know. So and it did explain in timing.
There's a great sense of futility to all this, isn't there? Even if he is the worst imaginable version of all of this, the most inappropriate, the biggest liar, the biggest sexual perpetrator, if he's all of these things, I think most of us, and I'll just to speak for the left, kind of in general, most of us are filled with the impression that it doesn't matter how horrible of because this is Trump's America, how horrible of a human being he is completely irrelevant to whether or not Republicans will still upvote him.
But it's not.
They just don't care. If he's guilty of everything, it doesn't matter to them. They're gonna put him in because he's young.
What would matter though is that he lied. Bill Clinton wasn't impeached because he was a sexual predator who hit on a 21-year-old and got a blowjob, at least one that we know about. He was impeached because he lied about it.
Exactly.
And so, with here, if what it'll turn into is he lied about certain things, and it's not that we think he's a sexual predator, but we've established that he lied and blah 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 blah. And that's why that would be why they didn't confirm him.
Has anyone here seen the ACLU's smear campaign on Kavanaugh?
You're gonna have to get a little closer to the mic or something.
So I was asking if anyone here has seen the ACLU's smear campaign on Kavanaugh recently, and I was wondering what your opinions are on it.
I hadn't heard it. Could you sort of expound on it?
So they made a commercial that they're airing in a number of states that compares Kavanaugh to Bill Cosby and Harvey Weinstein. Just talking about it's just obviously it's a big message about sexual assault, essentially. And I was wondering if you guys thought that was preemptive or unwarranted, given the nature that we don't have any official I guess, ruling on what happened yet. The investigation's not done, etc.
Well, I brought up Clinton, and do they compare him to Clinton?
Yes.
Yeah, they did as well.
There you go.
So
He deserves that crap too. No, absolutely.
He deserves that crap.
Yeah, I mean, Harvey Weinstein. I don't know if they've actually. I know they're investigating charges, but I mean, Bill Cosby is a convicted criminal who's up for prison time. But I mean, comparing him to Clinton, I don't think it's much of a stretch.
No, I totally agree.
Yeah, I was just wondering what your opinions are. Like, I mean, we can make the comparisons all day here in the privacy of our own home. I was wondering what you thought about like a paid-for ad that was being aired in multiple.
The only surprise in there for me was that they included Bill Clinton.
I mean, civil liberties, commenting on a public official.
I think what's being.
I mean, they've sued the Obama administration. They're
very for the First Amendment. So.
Yeah.
It was probably a smart decision to include Clinton and not be accused of like any sort of political.
Honestly, it's probably
there's a lot of stuff going on. The Me Too movement is brought up kind of constantly throughout all this Kavanaugh news. So it also doesn't surprise me with Harvey Weinstein, since he's kind of the poster child for like the beginning of just. I mean, I know the Me Too movement, technically started in like 2006, but it really got, momentum when the stuff about Weinstein started coming out. So I could see that. And the Cosby thing, oh, he was a bad guy.
Yeah,
that's so
and he's going up for that. I think it's a little bit unfair comparison between somebody who is alleged / probable versus someone who has definitely been convicted.
Yeah,
and like was intentionally, like convicted of doing things intentionally, whereas my gut tells me Brett Kavanaugh used to black out a lot, and he just doesn't.
He was by all accounts, he was a sloppy, mean drunk. In high school and in college, like that's it's hard to refute based on the physical evidence, in his yearbook, and in the testimonies of all these people that he knew and encountered. Like that's a really hard thing to push back on. Again, none of that makes him a sexual assaulter, but like. The big takeaway from all of this is that he lied about that, like up and down. That he painted himself as a fireboy.
I guess the other similarity is it's not truly he said, she said. It's he said, they said. Yeah. And with Weinstein and Cosby and Clinton, it wasn't a he said, she said. It was a he said, they said. There was multiple women. So.
Yeah,
that's true.
I think it was one of the things that was interesting is.
I mean, I'm probably not going to watch the ad just because I assume it's probably tasteless, similar to like the Kathy Griffin thing or whatever.
Yeah.
But I mean, they're very First Amendment. So. I mean,
which is fun. Like I support their support of the First Amendment, but I was just more curious. Not about the content of the ad so much as the timing in which it was released, and I was wondering if you all thought it was too soon for that kind of material.
I think that it's not too soon for like a targeted political ad. I think the timing is perfect.
Exactly. I think that's where this is going. And again, it's sort of referring back to what I said a few minutes ago about. There's a sense of hopelessness about this ultimately, that it doesn't matter how bad a dude Kavanaugh is, that Republicans don't think they have the time to bring someone else forward. So they're going to push him through regardless of what he's guilty of and regardless of what kind of person he is. They're going to push him through because otherwise there's a good chance they're going to lose the opportunity to appoint a Supreme Court justice who is going to sit on that bench for the next 30 to 40 years and, in my fermented opinion, taint jurisprudence in this country. But that aside, the takeaway for the rest of us who see this going down as probable, and I'm still holding out some very vague and naive hope that we're going to see a couple Republicans in Congress with some moral spine who are going to vote no on this guy. that when that happens, that's going to be used to motivate women, essentially, more than anything else, to get their asses out and vote in November and get these people out of. Hang on a second. Yep, that's about exactly right.
What?
He saw a meme that's like from The Office. If you hold it like way up to the camera, let me see. I don't know.
No.
It's what's his name from The Office?
It's Jim Harper looking through the blinds. I don't know if you've seen
and smiling maniacally.
And smiling maniacally, and it says, "Me watching the next Supreme Court justice getting pushed even further to the right."
Yeah, and that's what this is, because like, and I'm not going down that rabbit trail, but this guy is very far right of Kennedy, honestly, in terms of jurisprudence. He's like an atom maybe to the left of Gorsuch, and so the whole thing is
Kavanaugh's pretty partisan.
That's what I'm saying, that he's extremely partisan. Yeah. And he advertised that himself in his own testimony, which again, that's
I
not.
thought that was extremely unattractive.
That just, Democrats, doing that thing.
Like a Clinton hit job. Like, really?
Yeah.
Like, don't make me defend the Clintons. I'm not going to defend the Clintons.
Like seriously.
Right? Like, really?
But I mean, like, why do you gotta, it's not a Clinton hit. Like, come on, man. It's 2018.
What I knew was Brett Kavanaugh.
Who the hell's going to step
I thought he was fairly moderate given the choices.
Kavanaugh?
Yeah.
Well, I would disagree with you there. Again,
before.
Oh, okay. Well, yeah. I mean,
before the hearing, he seemed like a more moderate choice, and then after, it's just like, oh, okay.
Yeah. It a lot more information came to light, I think, and also everything got, the dial got turned up to 11, especially in that testimony.
Say, I feel like he painted a different picture of himself before. Any of these things ever came up.
Yeah.
You gotta stay close to the mic.
Yeah.
I'm sorry about that.
Yeah, you've got about like this. Anything further, we start to lose you. I kind of want to switch. I should have switched you with that bigger mic stand before we started.
That's
because
right.
I've got the only nice one here, and I can come right up.
How's it going, guys?
We're switching out.
Coffee talk.
Coffee talk. It's no big deal. How you doing?
Can you do NPR?
To do what?
Can you do NPR?
I don't know that. I don't actually listen to NPR, so I don't know their.
Okay, so I always wonder, is that like a studio thing, or is it like, do they do some kind of NPR voice training, or like, how do they all sound? They have that same like
they don't want to wake you up, like they're golfing.
I don't know.
It's the most monotonous thing ever. I mean, it's pretty soothing, and I generally like enjoy NPR, but I also like classical music. So
yeah,
I love NPR, but I swear it's like they all have that same kind of like vibe when they speak.
We're here.
Yeah, and it's just very mellowed out and tired almost.
Yeah.
I don't think I could ever listen to that if I was sitting in traffic and not fall asleep.
Oh, it's rough.
But I try not to do that here. I think I've got a little more pep in my step typically. I hope.
I remember when I was younger.
I can't speak for McVeigh, but
when I was younger and we were taking road trips, I'd ask my dad to turn on NPR like as we were leaving the state, so I could fall asleep.
So you could fall asleep. Yeah. Can you put on NPR or golf? Can you do one of those two things?
Yep.
So I can sleep through this car ride.
Oh, I'm a car sleeper anyway. Just being in a car puts me to sleep.
Oh, I always drive. I'm never a passenger. I always drive.
I'm an airplane sleeper too.
I can sleep on an airplane. I can definitely do that.
It's before it's even off the ground, I'm out.
No, I can't do that. The only time I've ever been able to sleep on an airplane, my dad and I were going to Europe last year, and he had an episode that put us in the emergency room the night before we left for Europe, and because we didn't get back until I'd say after midnight. That was one plane that I slept my ass. I mean, I woke up about an hour and a half, 2 hours before we landed in Istanbul. And the only reason I woke up is because I smelled food.
No, I travel for work a lot, and it just amazes all of my coworkers because I'm out. I sit down and I'm done. That's it.
I just had a bit of a nightmare on a work-related trip. So we were going to GABF, which is the Great American Beer Festival in Denver.
That's what's up.
Yeah, it was actually a very fun trip, but the first day was awful. So we had to leave. Our flight was at like 5, I think, and it's a little bit of a ways from Columbia. So I think we left at like 2:30, and I didn't sleep the night before. And when we landed, we had sort of, we had to meet people when we were there. So we had to drive to Fort Collins and go to a bunch of different breweries. And it's like, I think I was up for 40 something hours drinking beer. And I was just like,
I bet you were.
I couldn't do it. Anytime I sipped those beers, I kept getting sleepier and sleepier. And it's like, the last place was only 15 minutes away from where we were staying, and I fell asleep in that 15-minute car ride there.
Yep. But I guess back to the subject at hand. I like to. We try to keep it kind of casual on the Hangouts. This isn't, we try to have some fun here. That's the idea, is that it's not as, when we do the podcast, it's a little more, formal, and we try to keep it a little more concise because no one's going to want to listen to us, bloviate, on the podcast so much.
Well, I mean, I'm pretty sure they do. That's called radio, right?
Yeah, I guess to an extent, but you got to keep it minimal. Yeah. I do have. We were supposed to have
people listen to Joe Rogan.
True. I was actually listening to his episode with Neil deGrasse Tyson. I just started listening to that. His episodes are super long. They're like 2.5, 3 hours long. They are. I'm like, I'm not as interesting or as famous as Joe Rogan, so no one's going to listen to me talk for 3 hours. But although I don't know, I guess Haley and Melissa we're coming up on, I think, a couple hours at least anyway. So appreciate that. Mike, our friend Mike Fussell, if I'm saying his name right, is trying to join us. I don't know if that's going to work out. He was going to join us originally, and there's a lot of people interested in hearing his commentary because he's sort of a local legend and very opinionated about these sorts of things, and he was going to come on and talk. Don't know if that's going to happen tonight. If it doesn't, we're going to try to get him on for a future Hangout because he would be super interesting to talk to.
Have you messaged him?
He's asking how we can join. He says, how do I join in watching on my phone? Is that possible, or do I need a computer? I said, well, you can click on the link. I sent him a link to the Hangout to join, just as you all have, to join in from his phone. Has not happened yet. I don't know what.
Did you tell him to download the Hangouts app?
I did earlier. I told him yesterday, I think. But
anyway. I've always had trouble trying to connect from my phone for some reason.
Yeah. And this 11th hour stuff is not. It's not a great way to go into it because you'll spend so much extra time trying to hammer out the bugs. Like someone's using, Internet Explorer, and it's not going to work with Google Plus and stuff like that because it wants Chrome and all these funny issues. But anyway. I'll see what happens with that. Probably nothing tonight. We'll get him on for a future thing, and he can crow about how Kavanaugh got nominated or got appointed to the Supreme Court. That's because it's probably going to happen. But bringing it back, sort of the topic at hand, like assuming that does happen, and I think like you were saying, like sort of like the ACLU hit piece type ad. A lot of this, and I've seen so much anger and so much energy from women right now about what's going on, because essentially. Almost all of them that I know of, and Melissa, I know you have sort of a different position on this, but most of the women that I've spoken to or have heard, or seen on, on social media, they believe Ford, and they think what's happening right now is an injustice, and they are pissed the hell off by it. And I think all that's going to be used for November for moving as many of these seats as possible, both in the House, which doesn't really affect the Senate, and the Senate. And to see, this could be like the big push for the blue wave, essentially, what people talk about.
I think it's going to be another year of the woman.
Yeah, that's what I'm hearing and seeing, that this midterm elections, which midterms historically you see a much lower voter turnout than a national election year. When we get a new president, like it's usually significantly lower. And a significantly lower, especially in Tennessee. We have like the worst voting record, in the country, basically, for voter turnout. And maybe we can see.
They were like
change.
Number 45, 49, or
we might have moved up a couple at this point, but like as of recent years.
Thank God for Louisiana.
That's not funny.
For somebody's new Mississippi.
But in Louisiana, we always say thank God for Mississippi. So it's actually.
I've heard that expression, "You're my Mississippi." Like I can feel better because there's you looking worse. And right now, Tennessee is that state when it comes to voter turnout. I hope to see that change. Hope to see more people come out and vote overall, because I think it's your civic duty. I think everyone should get informed, and they should vote. But that's essentially where this is leading, is that we're looking at, from the left's perspective, bad jurisprudence. From a skewed court for the next 30 to 40 years. There's all this talk of like quote unquote like padding the courts after the next election. We get a new president in like in order to like sort of drown out the extreme right, originalist type voices, to actually have like 10 or 11 like
There's that word again, Haley.
Which word?
Originalist.
Originalist. Yeah, I know she hates it. She hates
I
when I argue with James about originalism.
I'm not. Hold on. Let me drink. Hold on.
It should be the originalist drinking every time I say it, right? Or we start talking about,
Cheers.
over precedent, judicial activism. That anytime somebody says one of those words, we have to drink.
So to prevent Dave from going off on a tangent about originalism, I'm just going to start talking. And I do think, it's important to note that it's like, federal judges and Supreme Court judges are appointed for life. And the rule used to be that you needed 60 votes in the Senate to get one appointed. And I thought that was a very good rule. And the Democrats were the ones who changed it for everyone but the Supreme Court. And, I don't know. I could see that might need to happen if you're a country that's going to periodically experience times of extreme hyper-partisanship, just because you're going to need to keep the courts stocked. But for the Supreme Court, I think that if you're just going to have a simple majority to appoint them, then you need way more than 9 justices. You need like 21. Just to I think that would actually keep it more balanced. I mean, because it's 9.
Yeah.
It's just such a limited spot. But when it's just a simple majority, it's a limited spot and a lifetime appointment. That's why there's, still this chance that, I actually think that Kavanaugh more likely than not will be appointed. The way that I see he doesn't is if people, find that he lied in any of his sworn oath testimony. But sorry, that just the cat. Is there like a cat or something?
Oh, sorry.
Someone's got a cat. Yeah, singing the song of their people, right?
What was I saying?
I got distracted by the cat.
Increasing the number of Supreme Court justices.
Right. I don't think it's realistic either, but go on. Yeah.
Well, I mean, that's the temptation right there. There's 9 spots. There's only 9 spots, and it's for a lifetime appointment. And so, I think we all kind of know that there's no way that the FBI investigation is going to unearth some kind of smoking gun picture of Brett Kavanaugh teabagging a topless chick who's passed out. That's not going to surface. But
it's a very vivid.
Well,
so I mean, that's the great temptation to get someone who has a file that you believe is someone who falls into your leanings on your political platform for one of these 9 positions, because who knows when the next one will open up. But if it was increased to like 21 or whatever the number is, there's less temptation to, really just muscle someone through. So
I was gonna say the exact same thing. Like, regardless of what we want to believe about how, I guess, pure these people are in upholding just completely bipartisan values and following the law to the letter and everything. It's just like they do have their personal opinions and personal political outlooks, and I don't think it's beyond the realm of possibility that someone could make a vote purely based on partisanship or their opinion of what the country needs. Like, we need a Republican majority, or we need a Democratic majority, or it's like, I want another like-minded individual on the court, so I'm going to vote for them regardless of what the situation is.
But I saw someone, I don't know if they posted on the page or not, but someone posted, an interview with like a young conservative. He looked like he was 18 or something, but he was like, even if Kavanaugh did everything and he lied, I think that, I would still agree to vote for him because I think he's going to stop abortion. Or, that's just, I mean,
garbage.
Because there's only 9 spots, and yeah, you wanna get your 1 out of 9 vote for the next 30 years secured in, but it's way less powerful.
Can I take this whole conversation totally off the rails for a second?
Go for it.
Go for it.
Like we're probably going to go into like conspiracy land, and that's fine, as long as it's fine with you guys. But suppose Roe v. Wade is overturned, right?
Mhm.
So
I would be startled.
more than likely there would be exception for rape and incest, right? You would think, because that's kind of a popular position. So if that's the case, do you think, totally speculating again, we're in conspiracy land, do you think that that would increase instances of false rape allegations in order for women to be able to obtain abortions?
Well, but I had an initial
question.
I had an initial question though. Was there exceptions to prohibition?
I don't know.
That's
a good
because
question.
I'm not sure. I mean, I think it's abortions out. You know, like stop an abortion, like even in rape and incest. I think that's how you go with it, right? I don't think that because once you carve out exceptions, is it really overturned then? I mean,
well, that's what I wonder too, because surely there would be an exception if the mother's life is in danger, right? Like that would be an obvious one, because
You would think.
it's my constitutional right. If somebody came into my home and tried to harm me, that I would be able to kill them. So I would be able to kill a baby if it was going to take my life, right? That's the way I would get to that logic.
Yeah,
right, that happened.
Unfortunately, the way that you would get to that logic doesn't necessarily mean it's.
But that doesn't mean that's how the court's going to
Unfortunately, in
be.
Ireland in like 2012, that wasn't the case. There was a woman who had a septic fetus that was stillborn, or was going to be stillborn, and because that abortion was completely outlawed in Ireland, the woman actually ended up dying because they wouldn't give her an abortion, even though the fetus was already non-viable.
Congratulations,
and she died
of sepsis.
But then the end result is that they repealed the ban on abortion in Ireland some number of years later. But anyway,
I mean, there. Like there's someone who she's not an acquaintance of mine, but I know who she is, and she died in childbirth. And like that still happens, so I don't know.
It's dangerous.
No, absolutely. I feel like if it was overturned, I don't know if they would look into those exceptions, right? Like,
I don't.
Well,
I'm curious because I know, like,
seems
politically,
like it would be common sense, but common sense is hardly common, I guess.
I think.
So,
I think truthfully, go ahead.
So, but we're assuming the exception. Like, we're not going to get into that, right? So, assuming that there are exceptions, though.
Yeah, based on your original question on whether or not that would increase false rape accusations, assuming that was a way to get an abortion, I mean, I think it probably would, but maybe an insignificant number.
Yeah, I mean,
it's hard to say.
It's hard to say. I think it would be a significant number.
Really? You think so?
I do, yeah.
I mean, all I think is that is a way to illegally achieve an abortion. And so, yes, I think if you outlaw it, you're going to see a significant increase in illegal abortions. And it's not legal, I mean, it's a crime to make a false claim. So that's, right. I mean, so I would kind of group it into that. So I would expect an increase, but I think it's at like 0.02% or something.
Well, look at the potential repercussions of doing so, though. Like, there was a woman recently who's charged a double life sentence for false accusations of rape.
And to add on to that, I think that if we're following that, the law, they're making the false claim that you were raped or that it's a product of incest. I bet you get charged with murder. I think anyone who technically, if it's outlawed, it'd be because you're. So
you're saying if you made a false claim and they performed the abortion, you would then be charged of murder if you were found.
I think it'd probably go further. I think anyone who got an illegal abortion would be charged with murder because
Yeah, that's probably true.
If we're living in The Handmaid's Tale, then yeah. If it's gone that bad, but it depends on the wording. There's a difference between saying abortion is completely outlawed versus
But I mean, you
a
know,
more
you
realistic
can't
nerfing of the
end.
holding of Roe v. Wade.
It'd be that
Well-
you can't end a life, and life starts at conception, kind of based rule. So
If you-
Right.
if you end a life, that is the
If
definition. I mean,
shoot
yeah,
a
murder.
if you shoot a pregnant woman, it's double murder.
Yeah, it can, and I think in
Yeah.
some states
Mhm.
it can be you can be
It
charged.
just
that
makes
way,
me
sure.
wonder because even a lot of like the really staunchly pro-life organizations and people usually have that exception as kind of like a part of their stance, I guess.
I mean, so I'm thinking about prohibition again. People totally were still able to get communion, though. You know, like if they were Catholic, right, or something.
I don't
Yes,
know.
but
Say that
not,
again.
but not all of the wines are considered. There are some Catholic churches that don't use the fortified wines.
That's true.
I was an altar server, and I'm from New Orleans, so I think that they probably did use one of them.
That's probably-
It might depend on the parish.
So
Well, I'm not
Yeah.
saying no. I mean,
But
There's some-
I mean, but surely that was an exception to prohibition. I just kind of thought of that. Sure, right? Even if not every
It was,
Catholic
yes.
parish, surely that
I
was.
honestly never thought about that.
It
I don't know.
was an exception to the rule. Yeah.
Yeah.
There were definitely Catholic parishes during Prohibition that were totally fortified.
Oh, there you go.
I mean, I bet. Is someone Googling it?
I'm about to.
No.
I was just about to.
Go ahead, Amanda.
I'm curious because I want to know.
There was a lot of things that were going on in Prohibition that were
Right, yeah,
questionable
yeah.
in regard
That's-
to what the current standing of the
Well,
law is.
but that's where my thought was is that you know, yeah, that would, if it was outlawed, that would give rise to illegal means of access.
but then keep in mind too, no one's getting drunk off of a communion. I mean, every time I go to communion, they're not letting me stand there and drink the whole goblet. I mean, I do have to pass the cup.
When I-
But it's allowing people to still purchase an alcoholic beverage and consume it, regardless of whether or not you. I mean, that prohibition was prohibition against consumption of alcohol.
Which ironically
It wasn't prohibition against getting drunk, although that was the goal.
Yeah,
I still think I'd have a hard time with them saying that it was consumption of alcohol, just one sip out of the cup. I mean,
Okay, so religious use of wine was allowed. Private ownership and consumption of alcohol were not made illegal under federal law, but local laws were stricter in many areas, with some states banning possession outright.
Just
I don't wanna get
possession.
This is from Wikipedia, though.
yeah, right.
I don't want to get into a huge thing about this, but I'm in the alcohol business currently, and a lot of the like prohibition related laws have stayed constant to modern day, and it's created
Oh
a very,
yeah, I mean,
very
the whole-
convoluted system.
yeah, I'm from Louisiana, and I don't live there anymore. But I'm still getting used to going certain places, and it's still weird that you can't buy certain kinds of alcohol at the grocery store. You could
Yeah.
buy.
I
liquor,
agree.
and-
That's one thing that living in Tennessee, I will never get used to, because alcohol stores have always been open on Sunday. You couldn't buy hard liquor, but you could always buy beer and wine. And I was like, man, Tennessee laws are so damn arbitrary. And where is the drive-through daiquiri bar?
Exactly.
Well, I mean, you could buy.
we can
buy
buy
liquor
stuff on Sundays now. Yeah.
You could buy liquor
Yeah.
at Walmart in New Orleans, and I brought like a bunch of girls from law school there to stay at my house in New Orleans one time. And whenever I dropped them off, like I walked in with them to Walmart to get our supplies for the week, it was like I dropped them off in a candy store because they were like, "Wait, there's liquor here," and they were like, and it's at Walmart prices, and
So
then they all just
we
like
have
went wild.
That's why I buy most of my liquor at a wholesaler.
Yeah,
up in
me
Nashville.
too. Really? Have you been to Elixir in Spring Hill?
No,
I
not
would
been to
highly
Elixir.
suggest going.
Oh yeah.
Oh, Tariq is the best.
Yeah,
Yeah.
he's amazing.
I like what is it, the Parkway one, the one on the crossings?
Yeah, Parkway one's.
But normally I go to Frugal McDougal's.
so
up
it's
in
like it's right
Nashville.
across
That's
the street
my-
from Parkway.
Okay.
Yeah, he's probably one of the most knowledgeable.
Okay,
individuals.
I have been there, but it's been a minute.
Yeah,
It's
he's
been a
an
minute.
Indian guy.
Yeah.
He's
like
he's-
my-
So
Anyway, sorry,
I'm
right.
gonna bring it back
Sorry,
now.
We
but,
were talking
one
about
of the
Brett
things-
Kavanaugh, right? And-
Yeah.
One of the things that they asked for during her testimony was like, what's like, from the incident, what's the one thing that like you keep coming back to? And I believe she said either the laughter or choking. I can't remember. But like this new story is still developing. But is there one specific fact that like you just keep coming back to, and that's kind of defining your parameters of how you see this issue? Like, is it his political ideology? And I swear to God, is it because I can't believe you're making me say this. It's because he was originalist.
Oh, that's awesome. I can take a clip of you saying originalist and just play it over and over and over. Here's what colors my opinion most strongly on these testimonies in this whole situation. And it's honestly, it's not the jurisprudence. It's the fact that I grew up, and I was talking about this a little bit before we came on. I grew up knowing people just like him. I grew up in Georgetown. I didn't go to high school in Georgetown, but I went to a elementary / middle school. It was kind of a prep school, a Catholic school. It was called Holy Trinity. I'll just say the name of the place. And it was very much a feeder to schools like Gonzaga and Georgetown Prep where Kavanaugh went. Now, I was there in like the late 80s, early mid 90s, whatever. And he was like, early 80s. He's like good, like 10, 15 years older than me. But the culture is on point with what I experienced. I knew so many douchey dude bro jocks that were these entitled rich kids that I grew up with. And again,
attacked.
yeah, you don't fit that mold at all, by the way. But and none of this makes him guilty of sexual assault, right? But the culture surrounding him, based on not just my opinion of those kids, but the fact that we've seen so much from his yearbook and from his calendar and the obvious lies that he told in his testimony about things like like drinking too much and puking, and about trying to make it through 100 kegs, and the we didn't talk about this, like the Renate thing, the Renate alumnus. Talking about, oh, it was such a lovely honorific that we all had a dance with Renate. Like,
yeah,
are you
one
fucking
point when I was just
me?
like,
right?
if the gallon challenge was written on his yearbook, who knows what that would have actually? Everyone knows,
right?
Drinking a gallon of milk
and
under an hour.
Well, that's like the Devil's Triangle thing. That's. I've never played Devil's Triangle.
I actually
the drinking game,
think
or
that
any
one might
other
be
game.
right, though. To be perfect, like I thought it was like, I mean, I know the Devil's Triangle, but like, I don't know, the Triangle. I don't know. I played that one. Didn't seem as
really.
far-fetched.
I mean, because like that's. I don't know anybody who's played a quarters game called Devil's Triangle, but I have heard the reference to that being, Devil's Triangle or Devil's Threesome, where it's like two guys and a girl, is what they call it. And
I've never heard that one.
I've never heard that either.
Oh, really?
What, Devil's
I have heard it.
I've never heard of Devil's Triangle either.
I've also heard Eiffel Tower.
Well, there you go.
That's in regard to a specific position.
right. So, all that aside, the fact that he, to my mind,
Eiffel Tower.
Yeah, I know. I was gonna.
Just look at the picture of the Eiffel Tower, and you'll get it.
So,
you have to high five.
Oh my gosh!
The guys too had to. Yeah. Anyway.
Yeah, what they call it, the Devil's Triangle, whatever threesome, is when I guess they're two guys and a girl, and the guys don't make eye contact because it's supposed to be like, well, that's gay to make eye contact. Well, that's
which is
don't get me wrong, how stupid all of this is.
Gay,
but imagine
it's
just
gay if the balls touch. Okay.
Yeah, there you go. There you go.
Then you're in the clear.
Oh my gosh. Okay.
I
don't know. I just looked at the picture of the Eiffel Tower.
Okay, let me get this back on the rails for a second here, guys. The fact that he's lying, obviously, about being a sexually gross, beer swilling teenage jock asshat, basically, is what I take of him. And the fact that he lied about that.
He fits the culture. That's the thing you keep.
He fits the culture to a T. I know half a dozen kids that were my age that I went to like 7th, 8th grade who were coming out with personalities just like this. Like these people really exist. And he sounds very much, whether or not he did any sort of a sexual assault, all this other stuff about him is true. And he lied about it. Mm-hmm. If he had owned it, if he had said, yeah, I was a dumbass kid. I said and did a lot of dumbass things. Like, I actually got thrown out of Georgetown Prep. I was over there once with friends. I wasn't old enough to go there, but I got thrown off of campus for misbehaving. because we snuck on campus and acted like assholes. I did. I was one of those. Not like him, but I was a little more counterculture at the time. But neither here nor there. The point is, I said and did all kinds of stupid things when I was in middle school, when I was in high school, even to some extent when I was in college. Like we all did, and acting like you didn't, acting like you're a choir boy. When someone asks you, "Oh, were you a sloppy drunk?" I'm a good Christian. Did you ever get blackout? I got great grades. Like you're not answering the questions, and you're lying about all of this stuff. To me, that paints this guy as a dirtbag up and down, and he just doesn't belong in the Supreme Court.
Totally agree.
And that's exactly what we talked about earlier, is that like.
So Haley, you're welcome.
Regardless of whether or not the rape accusations are
what's
true,
the thing?
doesn't deserve that position.
What is John? Does he have one?
Do I have what?
Like is there like one thing that you keep, like, for David, it said he fits the culture, and he thinks he's lying. But
I'm actually like pretty on the fence with the whole thing at the moment. Like I don't like Brett at all. I still think there were a few contradictions in what Miss Ford said, and I'm interested to see how things develop. But my general perception of the whole scenario is that in reality, it's just meaningless. He's either going to get pushed through or he's not. And I don't think we're going to actually find anything out in regards to what actually happened. I think the end of this is going to be a large media blow up over essentially he said, she said. And for better or for worse, I think his reputation's tarnished forever.
Yep, I agree.
And I'm happy and glad that we're talking about it, but I don't think that there's, any opinion that I have on who's guilty or who's innocent.
Talking about what? Kavanaugh, or, the commonplaceness of sexual assault in America?
Oh, okay. Well, no, what I'm talking about this moment is Kavanaugh specifically. In regard to sexual assault in gender, in general. Wow. I would
Go
say,
for it. He's only had one drink.
Yeah, I would say,
since you got here?
Yeah, since I got here.
I like that. That's a good answer.
No, I would say, innocent until proven guilty, but you should always be allowed to ask questions, about someone's account, regardless of what side you're on. It's just like, if someone says something that doesn't add up, you should be able to question them, regardless if it's the defendant or the accuser. I don't think, the one thing that got me worried, or that stood out to me most about the Kavanaugh hearing, is like nothing's been proven yet, but people are like very adamant about it's just like he did this. It's just like 100%. Like there's no, and then people were like that to me the first day. It's like as soon as I was just like, I don't know, like this is like before we heard anything, I was like, this is oddly convenient timing, right? Like that was my first thought. And I think that's a valid point to be raised. And my opinions have changed. Like, I mean, I think her case is considerably more compelling than his, like you said, for many of the same reasons. But, immediately I had questions and I was skeptical. And I think you should be allowed to be skeptical. And any conversation that I've had with my contemporaries that aren't, I guess, as aware or politically inclined or maybe intelligent as you lot have instantly
I'll take it.
instantly demonized me for simply asking, but what if, just.
But I mean, I think that's completely fair. I think that, where we get caught up is that, we have certain entertainment outlets and, we just have a lot of sort of, I said this in the last Hangout. I called it like tabloid media is kind of the world we're living in. Yeah. But so I think that we often forget about the context. And, absolutely, do you need to hold the state to their burden to prove to you beyond a reasonable doubt that someone did X crime in order to lock them up in a cage?
Yeah.
Absolutely. And so, I figure that, but whenever we use certain terminology that comes with certain territories, I feel as if it can kind of muddy the debate, because of course you can be skeptical, but it is a little off to talk about things like guilty until proven innocent. It's like, well, he's not charged with a crime.
Well, yeah, okay.
So
I guess my concern lies more in situations less concerning Brett Kavanaugh and more concerning like actual legal repercussions is where.
Well, but I mean, I think it has multiple ones. Of course, you don't want to, start emboldening people to think that they can ruin someone's life with an allegation. Of course, that should be something you should always entertain skepticism. And so that's why I think it needs to be fit in with the context of, I mean, universities and having more due process. That's, probably a good thing versus how interested are you in hiring someone to mow your lawn and someone tells you, he sexually assaulted me. Like how much interest does it matter to you to engage in skepticism, to engage in fact finding? And, but at the end of the day, I think that just, not making an environment that's hostile to people coming forward is generally good.
Oh, I completely agree. And I have no hostilities towards Mrs. Ford, and I haven't tried to make commentary.
Well, I'm just saying in general, like that's why one of the things that it keeps sticking out to me is not necessarily about, what side of the story or what facts have been established. It's this one line that she said, like, do I want to throw myself in front of a moving train, even though it's probably going? But I mean, like to come forward with a claim, to bring criminal claim, to, I don't know, just to talk about that kind of experience hell, even to bring a claim, like that's, I understand. I don't know.
I'm with you. I think skepticism too. I mean, I have a mom. I have two sons. Like, I don't want them to live in a world where, someone can make a charge like that and completely destroy their lives. And also, it's prudent to note that Miss Ford is also a mother of two sons.
Yeah, and I think it would be.
Is that Mike?
Whoa, it's Mike.
Ah!
Hey, how's it going, Mike?
Good.
How's it going, man?
Finally made it in. How you doing?
I was good. I was having an ID 10T error problem there.
Oh. Well, we appreciate you joining us. It's a little, I guess, we've been through a lot of the conversation already. But
I've been listening
you've been listening into most of it. And I think, yeah. So welcome to Fermenting Opinions, sir.
What I was going to say was, I feel like the commentary "believe all women" is ridiculous. I think you should acknowledge all claims of sexual assault. Absolutely, like they should be taken seriously. But instantaneous belief, and that goes for men as well. I mean, like I know plenty of men who have been victims of sexual assaults.
I hate it when that happens.
Yeah. But yeah, I mean, all the allegations should be absolutely taken seriously, but I don't think belief is just instant. Like that's not how.
Yeah,
it works. I hate that hashtag.
Right.
I've actually talked to David a few times about how I actually feel as if like left-leaning messages are just in general horribly worded to be catchy, to be impactful. Or anything like "Make America Great." That's a good one, and Obama was like "change," and Clinton was
hope. It's very ambiguous.
I mean, I don't know. It's just not good.
That's true. We suck at messaging. We really do.
And I mean, and the thing is, I'm of course all for entertaining skepticism, but like my concern is, the hostile, like it is a hostile environment to come forward with a claim. And you do so, and I would think that we should work on that. So, maybe it's not believe them as the ultimate message, but like, guys, like, can we like work on what a horrible experience it is to come forward with a sexual assault claim?
I think this is really the first time that, I guess more widespread, sort of like. Higher I kind of want to say higher tier. I'm looking for the right words and I can't find them, but like sexual assault has occurred where it's like it's being brought into light more to the average citizen, like they're aware of kind of the Maybe, yeah. They're more aware of the process and what happens, like involving some of these situations. So I think that we're seeing a lot of problems with the system currently in place because we're actually more people are getting to view it for once. We're realizing that it's a hostile environment for someone to come forward, and we're realizing that how sometimes things can't be proven, and we're trying to figure out how to deal with that because it's all sort of very new on a large scale. Like, I mean, people have maybe
It seems like that term sexual assault has been so broadly expanded. Is sexual assault like if you're making out with your girlfriend or something and you get a little handsy? I mean, is that assault? Or
I mean, I think assault's about consent.
Yeah, if you kept going.
Yeah, you're cutting out on us a little bit, Mike.
Oh, I can hear y'all. Y'all just go ahead.
Okay. You're cutting in and out a little bit there. That's okay. I think to sort of echo what Haley was saying is like it's basically at the point of non-consent, and I think there was a really great video that came out not too long ago about sort of making an analogy between like having tea with somebody as an analogy to like sex or sort of any kind of sexual behavior is like, we're having tea as long as we're both agreeing to have tea together. We might be currently having tea and someone doesn't want any more tea essentially. And they're stopping. So now you need to stop having tea with that person. And if you continue to try to have tea with that person, that's no longer consent. Is
that what you get to call it these days, having tea?
they call it a lot of things. I don't know if they call it having tea.
Speaking of this, I'm curious to hear your opinions.
Can't hear you.
Hello, test.
There you go.
Gotcha.
Yeah, all right. I'm curious to hear your opinions on. So, what if the situation is two people have what at the time was consensual sex, and then someone later decides that it was a mistake? Because I've seen that raised a lot the past couple of days, where individuals are saying,
yeah. I don't think you can retroactively change,
consent.
Yeah.
I personally agree with you. I'm just curious.
I wish that was possible.
This question raised a number of times in the past couple of days, where
this is one of the
women are saying, or men are saying that's technically rape. And then I'm also curious what your opinions are on if both parties are intoxicated, because I know that for a while it's like, obviously if one party's intoxicated and the other is fully functioning and they sleep together, it's like you could be considered like under the influence or not making,
because if you're not conscious you can't give consent, right?
Well, yeah, but I'm not even saying conscious. Like, let's say
lucid enough to give consent.
Like, yeah, you know what's going on.
Sure.
Obviously it's different how many.
Right.
But like, yeah, you're lucid enough to what's going on, but as long as alcohol is involved, it can be perceived in such a way where someone can say it was just like, oh, it's like I had like 2 drinks and now I'm not happy about what happened. And I'm wondering.
I think if you're blackout drunk, you by no means have like the kind of like mental, like mens rea, the mental state necessary to intend to assault someone, and like in civil courts there's also so like negligence, and then there's also contributory negligence.
Mm-hmm.
So but that's a different burden, so I'm not really sure what kind of burden you're talking about in this context. But if we're talking in criminal cases, if you're like, even people who are blackout and drive and kill someone, they're not convicted of murder. They're convicted of, vehicular manslaughter,
right.
Reckless homicide. They're not convicted of intentionally killing someone. They're not convicted of doing anything intentional. They're convicted of doing something extremely reckless. And in civil
Good
courts,
God.
there's also probably in criminal, but there's the weighing of the circumstances, the totality of the circumstances.
Right.
So but yeah, where it's a more clear and cut line is when someone's drunk and the other person isn't, and they take advantage of one. But whenever you start messing with everyone's mental states, and that's what with Kavanaugh, like, I think he got blackout drunk and woke up sometimes, was like, what happened? And maybe he has a little bit of that, like, feast anxiety. If you've heard that phrase?
What's
like,
that? What is that?
It's whenever you like get really, if you go to a party and you just like get really wild and like enjoy feast, and the next day you wake up, you're like, what did I do yesterday? Holy shit! Like, you have your feast anxiety.
Oh, so every Thanksgiving. Thanks.
Yeah, no. Like,
I hate it when that.
Did I bring up politics at Thanksgiving? So
Right. Yeah. 3 drinks later. Yeah. It's
but I mean, the real concern is for Kavanaugh whether or not he has the moral character and fitness to sit on the Supreme Court. And for sexual assault cases in general, it's like, do we have a predator on here? Like, what, and how interested, what is on the line liability wise? Is someone getting locked up in a cage? Is someone getting promoted at work? Is someone getting hired to be your gardener? Like, what are the levels? And yeah, that's kind of where I'm going with that.
I hear you.
Thought.
When
Mike,
I
what do you
see
think? Go ahead.
when I see a president nominate people for his cabinet, I don't mind if he hires his friends, as long as they can do the job. I mean, I know guys that I went to high school with, and girls too, that you sometimes think, if I was president, I'd probably hire him for this. But I know he could do the job. But just somebody because they're your buddy, you want to do this job for me? Yeah. And a perfect example, one example that kind of sticks in my craw is Donald Rumsfeld. When he was Secretary of Defense under George H.W. Bush. Well, then when he got elected, he went out into the private sector, and all of a sudden, he just becomes CEO of the J.D. Searle Company, Searle. They make aspartame, and they've been trying to get aspartame okayed by the FDA for drinks and stuff. Couldn't get it done. Well, all of a sudden, lo and behold, Rumsfeld becomes CEO, and voila, now all of a sudden, aspartame is approved. You don't think he called in some favors for that? Hey, man, you remember when I backed you on this such and such, scratch my now.
You're talking about cronyism, essentially.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
That's a bunch of bogus right there.
They go from Congress into, their
crony capitalism.
Do you
lobbyist jobs. That's not.
Do you think Kavanaugh is Trump's friend who can't do the job, or?
Yeah.
I think he could do the job now. If he was still getting blackout drunk, no, he can't be doing that. Can't have that. I think he's. You look back at the person you were when you were 17. You're not the same person now that you were then. Or then, no, I don't think you need to go to the Supreme Court.
Do you think that someone who has
But if he lied, if he lied in front of that committee, that's he got a little squeamish and wishy-washy on a lot of those answers when he was being grilled about blacked out, drunk, and don't remember. I like the drinker. You ain't doing yourself any favors there.
Who lacks self-awareness and ability to reflect and admit to their faults belongs on the Supreme Court?
Say that again.
Do you think that somebody who lacks self-awareness and ability to admit their own faults belongs on the Supreme Court? Do you think they can still be?
I don't think so. I think he ought to. I don't think publicly gonna do that, but I went to his wife about it. He said, "Well, hon, I did play black out a few times, but blah, blah, blah." But it's kind of like you have the public persona of yourself that everybody knows and that and then you got the persona that only that nobody knows.
That's absolutely
well,
true.
yeah, but
that's such an interesting fact to look at when you kind of realize to yourself that you have no idea how anybody else views you as a person.
Well, but I also think that it matters more if you're a Supreme. Like, he didn't have to accept the nomination.
No,
absolutely. So I think that if you, of course, you're gonna be someone different at home, then you are going to put yourself out as being publicly. You're going to try to hopefully be a better person, like publicly, if you're a politician or something. But if you're so afraid, like if you have these, like you don't have to accept the nomination. It's just certain things come with certain territories. People who run for president are going to have to open themselves up to being scrutinized by the public. You're asking for the public to vote for you to do something, to respect your political jurisprudence, whatever it is. And so if you're going to, you don't have to do any of those things, but if you're going to make a run for that to be a representative, you're opening yourself up to have yourself privately be scrutinized.
I think when you're in front of a TV camera, you want to come across as polished and well refined, and then when the press conference is over, you go, "You believe what that son of a bitch said?" I'm sure there's a big personality difference between, Trump especially, and with Obama or with Clinton or whomever was in office. When you're before a camera and trying to make a good impression, you try to put your best foot forward and try to be that polished, super, got it all together person. And then when the press conference is over, you probably go back there and talk to your closest aides. God Almighty, I can't believe he asked me that. I ought to just,
that's something else interesting about the Kavanaugh case. I feel like before the accusations were made, he presented himself as fairly moderate. But as soon as the hearing started, he was making very partisan commentary. And, it was obviously a push for partisan support in his favor.
Yeah.
And I think that was hugely devaluing to his argument.
Well, I heard, and I don't know how accurate this information is, but I heard that there was some commentary, because as I explained last week, I've had strep and bronchitis, so I haven't really, last week wasn't really paying much, I wasn't tuned in much until the hearing started, when the testimonies between both were being aired. But I heard that there was some discussion prior to the testimony of Kavanaugh in particular, that the concern was that he was coming across as a little bit too milquetoast, and that he needed to push back. And I think the pushback that he was coached to push back on, I think it came across too aggressively. So at first it was like, well, he's going to have to do something to defend himself, because he's a pushover. If he doesn't stand up for himself, it's going to be bad for him. And a few steps too far with the defensiveness.
Mm-hmm.
But I mean, part of that also stems from, if you're coming in like, okay, I'm telling my story second, coming in at, like, you listen to the first story, what you're trying to rebut. So, like, you're probably right, he was probably coached wrong, but also he should have listened to the first round, what Ford had to say and everything, because I think,
and that's another one of those like weird catchable lies that he said too, because he testified that he wasn't listening or watching, but it was it was reported by several media outlets that he was watching. So it was just like, it was just this weird.
He read a written statement. My understanding was sort of
Is that
how
what
he
it was?
opened with that. His opening testimony was a prepared statement.
Right.
It may be that it was part of that, and that he did sort of watch any. I mean, I don't know for sure.
I mean, his opening statement, he brought up the Clinton conspiracy. So
It
like,
was
let's
weird.
Right. It was extremely.
No, but I
poorly
don't think it was
conceived.
during that. I don't think it was his opening statement. I think he was directly asked, "Did you?"
Yeah,
watch
he was.
her?
That was
And
like
he
that
said
was the
no.
that was the very last question he was asked. Like another thing, whenever he was like the legal drinking age was 21 in Maryland at the time, in the summer of '82, and it was like no one, like no one.
Yeah,
I don't
it
know.
was just,
and I mean, like
he
that's new.
lied
That
about the
doesn't
weirdest
stick with me,
stuff.
but it's weird. Yeah, I don't know.
Yeah.
I
What do you
found
guys
that to
think
be
of the
weird.
role of the prosecutor? The hired prosecutor, rather. That Haley, I know last week you were talking about her as very much as a polite talking hired gun for the Republicans, basically as a matter of optics. That she was going to be nice and friendly and ask not not dig into her with the questions, but like
Guess
didn't
what?
want a bunch of old
optics,
dudes asking her
I
questions.
think it backfired.
That optics totally backfired too. Like I was like, they're stupid to do it, and then I was like, oh, and then they even went stupider with it. Oh man, it's like don't. I mean, if you're gonna do that, if you're gonna put on that show, you gotta close. You gotta finish with the show you put on. But
She didn't close it.
No, I mean, the moment she started questioning Kavanaugh, the next person who came up was like, this isn't going good. I'm freaking out now. Let's let Lindsey Graham go on a tangent. And yeah, now everyone's questioning. Yeah. Oh, I don't know. It was like, ooh. I don't know. It just showed how weak of a decision that really was.
It's my understanding, and again, someone correct me or tell me that you think I'm wrong here, that initially she was supposed to ask pretty much all of the questions of both people, and because they saw how badly it was going, that when it was Kavanaugh's turn to be questioned, instead of yielding, each of the senators yielding their time to the attorney, that they basically, the Republicans got up and grandstanded instead, because that would be more effective.
I think Graham sent a note to Grassley and said, "Hey, I want in."
Yeah, and that seems like sort of a vote of no confidence in the attorney there, because I think it sort of reflects on what Haley was saying, is that it was not going well, but then they kind of changed horses midstream with it, to let these guys take over and try to essentially give cover, is what it looks like from my perspective anyway.
I think the question Ford, though. I can understand them maybe wanting to question Kavanaugh, but I don't think they needed to chime in and question Ford.
I mean, I think that Ford gave very engaging and, ultimately powerful testimony, but I don't think that the prosecutor, gave her easy lobs, and I think that she did, a decent job and everything, in, not. I mean, I don't think she set up Ford that much to like really lob really good statements. But
I really wanted her to convince me.
I mean, because she let her do her job against, she did the same thing to Ford. Just like analyzing the facts aren't that powerful to you anymore, but now everyone's going to take their time and just, it's going to just be a grandiose 5 minutes of you saying something on your, partisan platform. It just, I don't know. I thought like I thought it was fine for Ford, for the GOP, but the moment that they passed on her, the moment that they show that they were afraid of her asking just basic fact questions to Kavanaugh, and decided, you know what? Everyone's expecting a partisan circus, so why don't we give it to him? And they had, if they're gonna put on the optics of hiring a prosecutor to get to the bottom of things, whenever you switch switch teams midstream, that just shows, I don't know, that just
Sort of changing the starting lineup when things ain't going too good.
I mean, it shows your lack of faith in, the original game plan. And if your original game plan was let a prosecutor get to the bottom of the facts, why are you changing that game plan?
Because clearly it's not looking. I mean, I hear you preaching to the choir here, but yeah.
Not.
I mean, if someone disagrees with me, if they thought that went well, by all means.
I think a lot of people are cheering sort of the Graham, grandstanding as
well. I will say it was nice
to
see, I will say that it was nice to see Lindsey Graham grow a pair.
Yeah, that's true.
Lindsey Graham's an opportunist.
Now that he's not under, he doesn't have his buddy John McCain in the Senate with him anymore. He maybe he's thinking for himself instead of.
It's interesting. I saw a tweet from him from I guess a couple of years ago now, saying that essentially that if I don't have in front of me so I'm just going to paraphrase, essentially that if the party nominates Trump for the 2016 election, it will lead to the destruction of the party essentially. And now he's full, done a complete 180 essentially.
Well, it needed to be destructed.
Well, I don't know. I think now more than ever.
What do conservatives think about like these antics? I mean, do they approve of these tactics?
Of what Lindsey Graham did?
Yeah, I mean, did you like that?
I liked it.
Why?
I guess it was I was pleasantly surprised. Mm-hmm. I didn't think he had it in him, and I was finally glad to. Well, like I said earlier, you always want to. I was glad to see somebody finally get pissed off enough because on their mind instead of kowtowing to the whoever was watching, and so they'd have somebody come out with a better opinion of the guy,
Like worst thing I've seen in politics.
I thought we were talking about him.
No, I think I'm not a conservative, obviously, but I think it's one more. I think that's what people liked about Trump. I think that's what they liked about Lindsey Graham, and I think that they liked it from Brett Kavanaugh. We live in a culture where, for some reason, people want to be outraged, and it's particularly so from my opinion, from the right. They want to be outraged and pissed off, and they want to see other people get outraged and pissed off on their behalf.
Hey, David, we can totally hear y'all.
That was a thing.
Sorry. They can hear us. We're having a side conversation. Really sorry about that.
Basically, what
apologize.
We were saying, bringing up Lindsey Graham. I guess someone recently he was on CNN and told one of the news ladies or whatever that he didn't give a shit the way he was perceived, because they were asking about, it's like people are calling you two-faced because you worked on fairly liberal policies under Obama and now you're working with Trump. And he's like, well, I think Trump has the capability of doing good things in certain situations, and if you dislike the fact that I'm trying to help make this a better country regardless of who the president is, I don't give a shit.
Yeah,
and that's what he said. But
I'll have to see that. I'd be interested in that.
It was kind of surprising because I think generally he was regarded as somewhat spineless, having
right. Sure. I don't think Graham is as bad as a lot of others who
I thought it was
fit
just
the I am
out of place.
Go ahead.
I mean, I just thought it was out of place. If you're going to hire a prosecutor, I don't know. I just thought it was out of place.
I think he took over, and I think he grandstanded because that was a better. Yeah. That's what everyone's talking about now versus really anything the prosecutor said. Right.
So I'm no fan of Ted Cruz for a lot of reasons, and Beto is, of course, running against him. Mm-hmm. And I'm analyzing him and figuring him out and everything. And there are some things I don't like. But one of the things that he said in one of the debates with Ted Cruz, he like Ted Cruz made a point of saying like he won't work with conservatives, and like made a statement, and then Beto was like, I'll work with anybody, like he said it like a duel, anybody, anytime, anywhere. If you want to throw down on getting something done, I am, and I don't know, I'll admit I liked that. And
Sure.
so,
Who said that?
Beto O'Rourke,
Beto
who
O'Rourke?
like,
Is it
yeah,
Beto.
Beto. It's short for like Roberto.
Yes.
Beto. Yeah.
Roberto.
I run it against Cruz. Okay.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
And
Yeah.
I mean, I know other clips of him are being way more widely shared by the left, but
to
to
be
me,
honest,
that dual thing, I really like that. I digged that.
I mean, to be honest, though, I mean, Cruz has a pretty good point there in being able to work with anybody. I mean, Trump insulted his wife and his father, like, and he'll still work with him. Like, that's, it's completely fucking
Trump
spineless,
offered to
but like,
pay a
also
woman
shows
who
he'll work
looked
with anybody.
He offered to pay a woman who looked exactly like Ted Cruz to do a porn. Like he offered her $2 million.
Oh my gosh.
Or was it $200,000 to? Y'all know there's a woman who does look exactly like Ted Cruz. Like she does. And like whenever they were both vying for the primary, he totally, he tweeted about it, like offering to pay this woman money.
I don't remember that.
Oh
that's the one that always sticks with me. That one, like, oh man.
Wow. Okay. You'll have to. I don't
know.
No,
about
never
that?
mind. I don't want you to show me that.
And I don't want to Google it either. That terrifies me.
I mean,
That sounds like a bad time.
No.
Woman who looks like Ted Cruz. Like it's uncanny.
Okay, I'll Google that.
Exactly.
That sounds innocuous enough.
Yeah.
Ed Easter with a boob.
I'm really excited about your reaction to after you Google the woman because it's.
I'm not gonna do it.
If someone's body bits come up, I'm gonna be very upset.
I've seen enough that I'm no longer so curious as I once was.
Oh my God! She just saw it. She just saw the lady.
I'm gonna Google it. What's the name?
She looks exactly like.
What's her name?
It looks like Ted Cruz in a wig and makeup. Oh my God!
Oh my God!
Hold on.
Like Tadina or something.
No. Oh my God! She agreed to do it for $10,000.
$10,000.
Whoa!
Can go join in.
Oh my God!
I mean, she looks like Ted Cruz, and Trump asked her to do a porn.
Was it Trump?
Yeah, he tweeted about it. I actually, all of the things were horrible. I totally don't mind him trashing Ted Cruz. So I actually thought
I voted for Cruz in the primary.
Yeah.
That is wild.
Shoosh. Well,
all right. You do you.
Hashtag things you can't unsee.
You're welcome, everyone.
Yeah, I'm gonna get some more scotch. Hang on.
I definitely learned something new tonight, so that's a win, I guess.
So I still think Kavanaugh gets, more likely than not, I still think Kavanaugh gets the nomination.
I kind of think the same.
Yeah, I do. I agree.
I don't know. I'm still. I don't know.
Do you want him to get the nomination?
Yeah.
I'm trying to get more.
Unless he just flat out, blatantly committed perjury beyond a shadow of a doubt on some of his Judiciary Committee testimony. I think that might be what keeps him off more so than anything else.
Absolutely.
What do you like about him so much that that you want it to be him and not somebody else?
All I know is just how well respected he's been in the legal field for so long, and just the public resume of his, like he's qualified. One question I got is one thing I don't understand is when Gorsuch was nominated. Why did they not try so fervently to stop him? Whereas, I mean, it was almost from the get-go, even before the Ford stuff came to light. Why was everybody so adamantly against him?
Whereas after the nomination, in order to you have to be, you get nominated, then you get confirmed by it gets voted through the Judicial Oversight Committee before the vote goes to the Senate floor. And at the time, you needed and you always need a majority. You needed just a 51% vote majority, I believe. It was still at the time to agree to do the hearings, to vet the process. So at the time, Republicans had a majority. They still have a majority in the, I think it's 11-9 in the Judicial Oversight Committee. So they never had the votes for it to even go through the hearing process. So since it was, I think it was still 9-11, with 11 being GOP, at the time that not Gorsuch, but you're talking about Merrick Garland.
No,
the guy that Trump nominated, Trump's first nominee.
Talking about Gorsuch.
He seemed to get,
no one came forward with sexual assault allegations.
Yeah, but honestly, it just seemed like before all the sexual assault allegations came through, they were just immediately crawling all over Kavanaugh before any of that even came to light. And I was scratching my hands. Well, I wonder why they are so adamantly against him when he's probably not all that much different than Gorsuch. Why did they kind of let Gorsuch kind of go on through fairly smoothly?
I think that Trump invites reactive responses, and I think that Trump getting 2 noms within 2 years just invited.
Probably that, but I don't think it's just that. I think Kavanaugh is a bad pick because
if Kavanaugh had gone first and then Gorsuch came up, do you think they'd be going all over?
No, I think the fight would still be centered on Kavanaugh because he has a history of partisan political activity, and from the Ken Starr, investigation to his work with the Bush administration, to his work with helping Pryor and other judges
and the cases that are before the court this next term.
Yeah, and all of that stuff.
Gables?
He's
USB
much more.
Gables?
I'm not sure. You'd have to. I don't know anything about that.
That doesn't matter. It doesn't matter.
It's okay, but the fact
take Elena Kagan and the other lady.
Ginsburg.
They probably.
Sotomayor.
Yeah, weren't they pretty much the same way on the left though? With their
not
they were also voted through. They were voted through by at least 60 members of the Senate.
Yeah.
So I mean, they were still 60. They were still under the old rules of the 60.
Yeah, but they weren't as politically active in their judicial rulings and things that they had worked on over the years, like Kavanaugh has been with his.
I think the only person who was.
I'm getting a really bad echo, guys. Is someone?
Yeah.
There's headphones to be put in. Can we put them in, please?
Is it me?
I think Amanda rejoined the call.
Sorry, my battery died on mine.
Oh.
Okay. The last Supreme Court justice that I saw in their confirmation hearings say anything particularly political was Ginsburg, and the political thing she said was women having control over their reproductive rights, including access to abortion. She's very much for that because she thinks that's a big part in keeping the playing field equal for women. But that's the most political statement that I've really seen come out of it.
Can you imagine if something happens to her and she resign for whatever reason and go and Trump gets a third nomination, Lord have mercy.
Yeah, she's we hope or
to be
is
perfectly
eating
honest
Wheaties
with
and
you,
stuff.
the longer Trump has been in office, the more I've seen him learn from experience. I am surprised by his choice with Kavanaugh, and I'm surprised I mean, I guess I'm not, just because I mean, I know he's been accused for sexual assault, so I mean, just maybe he just didn't take it as seriously as some other people would have. But
I wonder if Trump knew about any of this when he nominated him.
But I mean, even if he didn't, he should have jumped ship pretty quickly. But I would see him not making the same mistake twice. Yeah, I mean, he's done things that show he can learn how to play the political game and not make the same mistakes twice.
Trump.
Except the one mistake he keeps making is continuing to tweet.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
I think he does that to be antagonistic more so than he does to
he needs to
communicate directly with his base, so to speak.
Like legacy wise, I think it's going to be a bad look. History will judge him very harshly for that, I think. But I understand the strategy that he says some ridiculous ass thing, the left loses their minds, and then the right gets to make fun of them for it. Right? That's what happens like day in, day out.
Not
right?
only.
Yeah. Most of the time he tweets stuff, he's just doing it to tweet the media.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, he does something that's very formulaic, which is say something that is completely outrageous, which garners a lot of support from fringe ideologies on the right.
Sure.
And then takes a considerably more moderate stance once actually enacting a policy. And I think it's incredibly formulaic how he's done so, because it gets people riled up in both directions where it makes it attention worthy.
What's an example of that? Like where,
he's tweeted, especially in regards to the wall and everything has been
press being enemy.
Overblown statements that have resulted in considerably less actual motion to get.
Well, he doesn't have the power.
Like that
he doesn't have the power of the purse to order the wall. But I mean that's Congress that does. So
right. I'm just saying there's particular examples where it's like, he'll say something fairly extravagant and the reality is considerably less extravagant or more moderate. I mean, regardless of what occurs. I mean, a lot of the situations involving Korea, it was kind of like fire and brimstone. Like, we're going to rain death upon you, for insulting America, blah, blah, blah. And it's like, oh, we reached an agreement, yada, yada, yada. We're having talks.
We're in love now, yes.
Like, yeah.
I was about to say, well, now there's an agreement.
They're in love.
There's not an agreement, but they are in love, apparently.
He actually goes
He's no longer Rocket Man.
And a lot of times stuff that they'll say gets blown just totally way out of proportion. Here's a perfect example. Remember when Hillary was testifying before that committee and said that about what difference does it make? She wasn't saying what difference does it make that those people got killed. But you listen to certain, conservative radio, they or TV, they say, well, all she says, what difference does it make? There's 4 people dead. That's not what she said, people. And then when Obama said that about, well, your premium's going to go down $2,500 on Obamacare. That's not what he said. He said, let's just say your premium goes down $20 and this will happen. He didn't say your premium was going to go down $2,500, but you listen to the radio and say, well, he said my premium was going to go down $2,500. Well, no, that's not what he said, people. And and then you take Trump will say something like, and people embellish it like the right did what Obama and Hillary said on those 2 examples I gave, and no, that's not what Trump really said. Here's what he said. Sometimes what we hear is a lot different than what they say.
I think there's 2 very good sources that can help explain.
Oh, Amanda, do you have headphones? Oh, she does now. There we go.
Okay, there you
Sorry,
go.
I just heard the static kickback. What were you saying? Sorry.
I think there's 2 very good sources that kind of explain Trump as a politician. One of which is, of course, his Art of the Deal. But the other, which offers a very different viewpoint and is incredibly interesting read if you haven't gotten around to it, is written by the creator of Dilbert. I forgot the exact name of it.
I know who you're talking about.
Yeah, but he basically explains that he predicted that Trump would win the election before it happened, and he is at least self-described as incredibly left-wing individual.
I mean, I predicted he was going to win, so I'm not Dilbert, but
right.
And I thought you were crazy.
He goes on to explain how Trump
I'm so sorry I did that.
Trump isn't an idiot. There's a lot of very predictable moves that he is making, especially regarding his personal ideologies, which are explained in the Art of the Deal, that he does on a consistent basis. That after you know what they are, they become very formulaic in regard to what his policies are.
One of the examples I immediately think of is he is someone who is inclined to believe that in order to win, the other side, the other party has to lose.
I would agree with that. And in certain circumstances, I think that works, especially in regard to Asia. I've had a lot of experience with business dealings in at least China over the span of probably about 12 years. Where my dad basically lived there and I visited frequently. And the one thing that I came to understand is that the only thing that they respect is a very firm hand in regards to business policies. And they're very, similar in that manner. It has a lot to do with, respect and holding your ground and mutual respect. And so I think taking any sort of passive role with someone like China immediately means that you kind of roll over. And, I'm not fully in support of everything that Trump has done regarding Korea and China and everything over there. But I think that taking a stronger approach and being slightly more assertive is definitely the way that a president should handle that.
I mean, of course, being stronger in trade, I do not need to go off on a tangent on trade. But whenever you are dealing with, a literal giant that is China that has every single means and possibility to beat you as just America versus China, they're bigger. They got more stuff. They got more money. They don't have, it's not as,
they don't have our labor laws.
I personally don't think it's organized as well as we are, because I think that the free movement of money and trades and goods and not being so nationalistic and, communistic is a good thing. But if you actually want to take a strong chance against China, you need to recognize their capabilities and respect them, and just beating your chest loudly to the other people who are technically on the same team as you, just to show that you're a tough fighter if it came down to it, doesn't show what is, the proverbial other side, that you're going to be a tough component to play with. The last thing that we needed to do was to isolate ourselves from Canada and Mexico. Don't get me started on the New Deal and the EU. What you need to do is fucking shore up your team. And
I would agree to an extent.
I totally agree with that.
What I do think
I need
involving China specifically, there is a lot of peacocking. I mean, that is a very effective business strategy that I've seen time and time again. I mean, especially involving the people that. So my dad worked in pharmacology, right? And he was the VP of a pharmaceutical.
That's a specific area within intellectual property that America definitely needs to improve on.
Yeah, every company that he's ever worked for has been bought out and then destroyed by Pfizer. So he understands.
Hey, y'all, I need to run. I'll talk to you later. It's been fun.
It was really great having you.
good.
We'll do it again.
Thanks for the invite. Bye now.
Absolutely. You take care.
I completely agree and understand with that sentiment.
Yeah, but when it comes to medical stuff, you have to think about the FDA. That's why we still have the tennis balls on the bottoms of our walkers here. They don't have them in any other developed country. And why, my husband, one of his friends, made a shirt that monitors your heart to make sure You know, you just like always have your heart and heart murmurs monitored, and they couldn't get it through the FDA because it was technically a medical device, but they can market it to people under the age of 18 months. So it's a baby heart monitor, sure.
I guess all my point was you know, it's just like finding funding for specific drugs or finding people interested in having facilities in their province, etc. Like almost every single one of those meetings kind of resulted in just like a beating of the chest. It was like a pissing contest.
And
it was just like,
guys, I don't want to cut into this too much, but we are so well off the path of.
Let me just say, with the new NAFTA deal, it's actually harsher regulations on prescriptions to get through the FDA. With the United States, Mexico, whatever the new thing is now, that's not NAFTA.
We could do a whole. I don't know. I hear about these things. Honestly, I glaze over.
Yeah.
This is like the originalism.
Sorry, I was just about to say it's like originalism.
And you're like, shut the hell up, David. Right?
Well, I'm not even really.
I know.
Shut up. It's just outside of my. It's just out of my.
I'm not really talking
your
about
wheelhouse.
The medical field in general. I'm just talking about dealing with individuals.
But you started the story with immediately go in pharmaceuticals and was like, oh, there's our.
I was just explaining the situation as to how I was familiar with business practices in China. I mean,
can I prop your dad real quick? Can I?
Huh?
With y'all's business, or do you? I don't know if you want that affiliated or not.
For it, but really,
his dad is the owner of the Asgard Brewery, which I'm there like twice a week. Fantastic beer, y'all.
I am co-owner.
If you're you're co-owner, all right, awesome.
We've
50%
got
very cool, very cool.
That we own, so 40%.
Sure, but still, good beer. Go down and see him if you're ever in Columbia, Tennessee.
You got to finish your pitch in the goddamn mic, man.
I'm right in the mic. What are you talking about?
No, John.
Oh,
I was making clerical statements. He was just saying that my dad's the owner, and I'm explaining that we are equal owners of the percent in which we own the company.
Well, let's go even better, even more notoriety for yourself.
We're co-owners.
Yeah. Anyway, so like I said, I'm down there all the time. They make fantastic beer. Come down and hang out with those guys because I appreciate them being in Columbia. They've made me happy to be in Columbia as long as I have been because I was so ready to beat feet and get the hell out of here. And I was like, there's a really cool brewery in town, and I like going. So
beyond the fact that this is moderately a shameless plug, I've actually had very good political conversation there, and Andy Ogles and a couple of other politically involved individuals are there pretty frequently.
And we want to have him on too, by the way. But yeah, that's it follows.
Didn't he ran for something?
He's our county mayor now. Yeah.
County mayor.
Oh.
Yeah, which we actually had one of his opponents on as an interview guest. And that's a whole other thing that I won't get into. But I would like to talk to Andy sometime. We'd love to have him on the show. But yeah, it's like it sort of follows the same premise of like having these political conversations. We sit down, have a beer, have a whiskey, and we talk about our differences without being assholes to each other.
And I think he's very much like I don't know. That was the original, and I don't think it was in his intention to try and like rope us into his political campaign or anything like that. But that was one of the, I think, original things that kind of drew me to him because he was just in there with a couple of friends having a beer one night and invited me to come sit down, and we had a very good.
No, I need to talk. I've not met him. So next time you and I hear him there, introduce me.
Yeah, I think that'd be cool. The more I meet him, I think the more I like him because he's a very. I mean, he would fit perfectly in this environment. Let's put it
That's cool. That's cool. No, and I'd be into it.
He has a very casual tone when talking about politics.
Yeah, no, that would be cool. We would love to have him. But yeah, I lost what I was going to say after that. But yeah, I mean that is sort of the premise of what we do, essentially to go meta with.
I think what would be really interesting is to hear more about his experience involving his campaign with Newt Gingrich.
That would be interesting.
Since he was the campaign manager during his
no, for Gingrich, really?
Yeah, he was the campaign manager during.
We had not too long ago. We had a guy. I think I told you who was. He's working for Americans for Prosperity, Tennessee. He's like the field director or coordinator, or whatever the title is, for the sort of the Tennessee chapter. And I know Ogles was the president of that chapter, or the whatever head role of that chapter was. So we already have some connections there, essentially.
Yeah, I think
Justin Cornett was the guy's name.
We should wrap it up though. So
yes.
Going off topic.
Yeah, thank you. By the way, yeah, we're so I tried to get us back on topic and I failed. But this is a cool conversation. And as you saw, that was the other thing I was going to say. Like Mike there, I interact with him on social media and we behave around each other only marginally well. But I think it was a cordial conversation. It's sort of testament to the fact that when you have to look someone in the eye when you talk to them, you might tone down some of the rhetoric and some of the ugliness and vitriol that I think is poisoning the national conversation. And that's why we do what we do. So I really had fun talking to Mike. I hope we see him again.
Yeah. I think it was fine.
And for my regular fermenters and my new fermenters, really appreciate you coming out and chatting with us. Again, we didn't solve all the world's problems tonight. We're not going to. We're this is about being able to have the conversation in a way that's civil. And respectful.
Yeah,
I think we did pretty good with that tonight.
I had fun talking with you.
That's cool. Yeah, and I really enjoyed your commentary. Yeah, I think we're wrapping up here. But yeah, if you're watching this now, or if you had watched any part of this, please subscribe to us on the YouTube channel. We have a Facebook group and page, Fermenting Opinions, also the podcast, Fermenting Opinions. You can find us on iTunes, Beyond Pod, and also the web, fermentingopinions.com. Please check us out there. We're doing an episode tomorrow relating to Me Too and why women do not come forward once they've been sexually assaulted. And it's going to be a really emotional conversation, I have a feeling. So please stay tuned for that. It should be out either later this week or this weekend. So I guess that said, I'm David Papiden. James McVeigh is still busy canvassing for Jill Stein.
Don't hang up when the call ends, Amanda.
I just talked to him a minute ago. He went to Embers.
Oh, did he?
Yeah.
That lying bastard.
I know.
See, so if I tell lies about him, then that's fine.
He was at Embers canvassing for Jill.
He was at Embers canvassing for Jill Stein 2020 because he's totally
by playing her 90s rock band music.
Absolutely.
Anyway,
that's what he was doing.
I'm going to end the broadcast here. Thank you all for listening who paid attention. I hope you guys enjoyed it. I had a lot of fun. We're going to do this again real soon. All right, you guys take care.
Good night.